Welcome back, guys. I'm Zell, and today we're getting a look at the Steel Will Gekko. Alright, guys, this is another one that Nick sent along, and boy, is it a beauty. And there are some interesting things that we're going to look at. Let's get a look at our closed dimensions first. We got 4.43 inches closed, handle thickness of 0.6, which is a little thicker than normal, but this is not, in my opinion, an everyday carry knife. Even though you could, this one I do believe was designed more as a woods and adventure knife, and we'll see why here in a minute. We have a closed height of 1.5, so it's encroaching on Spyderco territory there. And what we get is linen micarta, and it is just beautiful. I actually really like linen micarta. I know there's some people that do and don't, but it just has a great feel to it, and it has that worn-in look that's just something special. I really like it. Got a pretty nice pocket clip here, and roll it around to the back. Everything is just machined so well. You know, get a look at that. Whenever you end up paying $170 for a lockback, these are the kinds of things I expect. Now, whenever I said this is a woods knife, we're going to get into why I said that, and to do that, we're going to take one of the scales off before we get into the blade. So, I don't know if I'm using exactly the right tools here, but because this thing, I've tried several different things. T10 seems to work the best, even though it's not quite perfect. But pull that off, and then of course we have the evil T6s. And if you don't know, T6 is evil. Knife companies should quit using T6. T8 should be the smallest thing they use. That's just my opinion, of course, and I'm just your average jerk, so anyhow, this is what's interesting and why it's different from a Buck 110, a Spyderco Delica, etc. This is your lock spring right here. There's another one just like it on the other side of the knife. Your actual pivot is right here, so that big screw that we took out of the side of the knife, all it does is go right down the center of the pivot. Now, it will affect the action depending on how much you tighten it up, but it really isn't directly in the action like it is on some knives. But what it does is it brings the scale in a little closer. Anyhow, what we have is on our lock bar, this piece right here, see that moving up and down? We have these two little pieces sticking out right there. They stick out on both sides, acting on this spring. And that is your lock mechanism, instead of, you know, if you go back and look at the Delica disassembly and reassembly videos, that's nuts. Really, this is a better system. And the Boker Patriot system is probably the best I've seen as far as making the knife easily maintainable. This isn't too bad. There are a lot of moving parts in it, and it's really interesting, but for the type of knife it is, I think we're doing well here. You know, and it does cause for these scales to be milled out there for that lock bar to go, or lock spring to go up and down. But Nick wanted you to see that, and after I saw it, I wanted you to see it too. It's pretty interesting lock design. Is it a great lock design? You know, I don't know. Something like that is going to add quite a bit of weight to the design of the knife. That's, after seeing Boker's lock design on their Patriot, I think it's unnecessary. You know, every knife maker is going to have their own opinion, and apparently Steel Will's opinion is that this is a great design. So we're not going to argue with them for today, even though I will say I do think it's a little overcomplicated for a lockback. So moving on to the blade. And what we get for a blade is a big old slab of N690. It's 3.5 millimeters thick. That's 0.14, so it's not a skinny little blade. This is definitely your bushcrafting and woods blade. And I've sharpened it up there, made it all pretty. And it is a really high hollow grind, probably, what is that? You know, more than 3/4 high. We've got some narrow swedges here, but we're still swedged here. And the spine is slightly rounded. And now that's a beautiful thing. Got some jimping here too, but that slightly rounded spine and the rounding they did here makes this thing slide in the pocket, and there are no sharp edges to get you. None. And that is just beautiful. And then, you know, how does this slice? Now, obviously, I've sharpened this thing, and I can make, you know, even some pretty bad geometry slice pretty good. This one, I didn't have to. I went with a standard angle, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but probably 15, 17 degrees, and then a 19 through 21 degree micro bevel somewhere in there. And it is just a great little slicer and should have plenty of edge stability. Now, it is N690CO. And what is N690CO? That is a steel from Bowler that is close to 440C. And performance-wise, I think it's right in there with 440C. And if you guys watch some of the discussion videos I had a while back, we talked a little bit about steel, and 440C was a big part of that discussion. And 440C has gotten a bad name over the years simply because we've moved forward with things like S30V, S35VN, S110V, S90V, you know, all these really, really super hard steels. But 440C done properly by a knife maker that knows what they're doing is a steel that is stainless. It is as good as your 154 CMs, or at least in the same ballpark as your 154 CMs. It's above your VG10s, and it's above a lot of those steels you see in knives from, you know, $50 to $80. If they would just move to 440C or CTS 40CP, and I'm not sure if I've got that right or not, but there's a powdered version of 440C that is awesome as well. Cedric Ada just did a cut test with that stuff, and it's beautiful. And that's kind of where N690 falls. It is right in there with all those steels. It is a very good steel, but it's not quite a super steel. And whenever I sharpened it, that's where it comes in. It comes in right in there with 154 CM, S35VN, that sort of thing, which is a beautiful thing, and it makes for a great knife steel because it is stainless and takes a rather nice edge. Anyhow, from here, we're going to move on to our pause and read card, and I'll be right back with you. All right, we're going to get this guy down in the pocket. And this is a woods knife, guys. This is meant for outdoor work. And we've got our lanyard hole up here to make it easy to get out of the pocket, out of the pack, out of your back pocket, wherever you've got it. And we have a very good pocket clip with plenty of tension. Now, our one thing is this guy is 0.6 thick, 6/10 of an inch thick. And that causes for a knife that carries even thicker than it is for some reason. I carried this thing for a few days, and this is a knife that will rub up against things whenever you have to go through narrow passages and the such like. So be aware of that. Our pocket clip, though, is very good. We have quite a bit of flip up. You guys know I'm not a fan of that. They kind of overdid it there. But on the other hand, if you're wearing work pants or tactical pants, you may need some of that to get it in and out of the pants, which it does work with those style of pants just fine. Now, it is tip up left or right hand only. And if you go to change orientation, be sure you get the right screw in the right place. One of these, I think the middle screw is longer than the other two, so you want to make sure you get them in the right holes. And anyhow, let's move on to our mechanical bits. And for our mechanical bits on this thing, we already looked inside it and saw all those neat mechanisms in there that make the lock work. And the lock works great. It falls down in that hole and it locks this thing up more solidly than any lockback I have messed with thus far. There's no play, there's no lock rock, there's none of that stuff that we normally get just a smidge of with a lockback knife. And our pivot has a couple of really thin little washers down in there. They are phosphor bronze. And all of our hardware is very good. Steel Will has put nice hardware with deep recesses, even though they went with T6 and they should be shot for that. Not really, I'm not going to shoot anybody. That's just a figure of speech. Don't freak out. I guess I'm armed. I shouldn't say things like that, but they need to learn better. T6 is bad. Anyhow, let's move on to ergonomics. And ergonomically, our Gekko is beautiful for me. Now, it's another one of those handles that your hand size is going to play a big part in. However, Steel Will has got you covered. There are several different sizes of this knife, from smaller ones to bigger ones, and of course the handle grows or shrinks with that. So if you've got small hands, they got something for you. If you've got really big hands, they've got something for you in the Gekko line. This happens to be the 1550, which gives it a 3.5-inch blade, and I think there's a 1551 maybe. I believe there's one bigger, and I know there's some smaller models. But this thing works really good with my medium-large hands, no matter how I want to get a hold of it. It is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that's a place where that thicker blade, or thicker handle, makes a difference. It's hand-filling and feels nice. And action obviously is very, very good for a lockback. And see what I told you about this thing affecting the action? It sure does, because earlier I had this thing where it would just drop free, and now it's not. So I have apparently gotten it too tight. But anyhow, there we go. It will do it. I just messing with it on camera, I goofed it up, of course. But anyhow, the action is very good. The thumb studs are well placed for flicking it open. And it is just a beautiful, beautiful thing, whether you're opening it slow or whether you're giving it that flick. It does the job quite well. So, in conclusion, I think this is a great knife. However, T6 hardware, I hate that stuff. It's overly complicated on the inside. And, they've got it sealed up well. And, I like the Marksman, and the Marksman is, kind of an overly complicated knife. But they're kind of marketing this guy for the Woodsman. And in that application, the overcomplication worries me. Because even though it's sealed up inside this linen micarta, you get anything in there somehow, and you've made a mess out of that action. You have one of those springs get sprung or broke. You're working on half an action. And yeah, I know, the other ones, it's one and done. You break one spring and you're done. But the chances of breaking a spring that's like what you have in your Delica or your Patriot is very, very slim. Those things last for years and years and years. The chance of having a problem with that piece of rod that's been sprung is greater. We all know about the torsion bars in your Kershaw knives, and occasionally they break. Now, I think this is better than that torsion bar design. Less stresses on the piece of metal, but still, that concerns me. And maybe I'm being overly concerned, but as cool as the mechanism is, I don't think I would want to have to rely on it to keep the knife locked up. Anyhow, guys, those are my thoughts on the Steel Will Gekko. This, like I said, is the 1550 model made in Italy with N690. And we really didn't go over the blade bantering, but all we have on it is Steel Will Gekko, made in Italy, and the model number, the number of production, and the steel. and they haven't made a big mess out of it. I saw one the other day that it may have been Jeff Jewell that had it that, oh my lord, it just had stuff everywhere on the blade. You know, and they were big, fat letters. That one was awful. That blade bantering I'm not cool with. Anyhow, steel wheel Gekko, it's a good one. Think about it before you buy it, because it is expensive at $170, especially for a lockback, but it's probably the most unique lockback out there. Anyhow, you guys have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.